Have it on yet.
All right with me. Right, that's pretty good.
Ray's out of town and I don't know where Isaac is. Isaiah, I mean.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's past the 5 o'clock hour, so we're going to call this joint meeting of the county, city, and harbor district to order. And I'm going to ask our respective clerks to please take the roll. Heather, you want to start?
Councilmember Greeno,
Here.
Councilmember Shalom,
Here.
and Mayor Inscoy.
Here. Harbor?
Commissioner White,
Here.
Commissioner Stone,
Here.
Commissioner Weber,
Here.
Secretary Shepherd. Here. And President Adams.
County, please.
Supervisor Short,
Here.
Supervisor Borges,
Here.
Supervisor Howard,
Here.
Supervisor Starkey,
I'm here.
Chair Wilson.
Here. All right, if you'd all please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we do have a time for public comment. Provide 3 minutes for the public to give general public comment before we move into our single agendized item. We'll provide public comment before any action is taken on that agendized item. Any general public comment?
Push the button.
Where's the clock? First off, I want to remind every one of you, you took an oath when you got elected to uphold the laws. The tri-agency constantly violates those laws. With that said, today I stand before you with a heavy heart and a deep sense of concern for the well-being of our community. The tri-agency, once a beacon of hope for economic development, has instead become a symbol of mismanagement, irresponsibility, and betrayal. In 2012, the tri-agency faced financial ruin, owing a staggering $290,000 to USDA. Shockingly, instead of addressing this debt head-on, the agency chose to ignore it, allowing it to fester for over a decade until 2022. It was then the board member, that the board members made a fateful decision to use taxpayer funds to bail out this defunct institution. But the story doesn't end here. In July 2023, these same board members, entrusted with the responsibility of serving the interests of our community, voted to resurrect the tri-agency using an additional $110,000 of taxpayer funds. And what was their vision of this revived agency? To hand over economic development to oceanic wind farms, effectively jeopardizing our local fishing industry, both commercial and sport. How can we stand idly by and allow this travesty to unfold? How can we condone the destruction of our community's livelihoods in the name of profit? It is unacceptable, it is unjust, and it is a betrayal of the trust placed in our elected officials. I refuse to support an agency that prioritizes, an agency that seeks to destroy the very fabric of our community for the sake of a quick buck. Therefore, I request a complete dissolution of the tri-agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other general public comment? All right, we're going to close general public comment. We have a single agendized item with a couple of possible actions. Discussion and possible action regarding the future Tri-Agency Economic Development Authority, including either the continuing of the Tri-Agency Economic Development Authority, along with the discussions noted here regarding the Joint Powers Agreement, contributions, staffing work plan, and existing litigation, or to terminate the Joint Powers Authority pursuant to Section 8.03 in the existing Joint Powers Agreement. I will turn it to our member agencies of who would like to go first in this discussion. County? Anything?
Again, I will beat this dead horse. Economic development is an absolute. Without economic development and the thing that the tri-agency can do, which is designed primarily, is that it can move in a direction to help produce infrastructure that produces and encourages economic development. Whether we talk about our parks, whether we talk about our beachfront, whether we talk about South Beach, working hand in hand with our local state and national parks in order to look at the potentials and possibilities of increasing infrastructure and increasing our attendance into those areas. Those are all areas that I think are much needed, and much can be done with a vehicle that is attuned to that. This definitely needs to be revamped. It definitely needs to be redone in a way that includes our partners. We had looked out towards our tribal partners as additions to this economic engine. We also have to look outside our just governmental to non-governmental economic drivers. That would include our national state park partners, because they have a huge role to play in economic development. Agricultural and both our fishing industries are key for us. However, there is nothing in the current MOU that would preclude the city and the harbor district from pursuing, as much as they so chose to do, encourage wind development in the area, in the region. There's nothing that would preclude that from being done by either of the two agencies, independent of what our county stance on wind development has been. And so there is things that I believe need to be done. Economic development is definitely something that the county needs to pursue, whether we move forward with the tri-agency as the vehicle for that pursuit, or whether we seek other methodologies and methods to do that economic development. It is definitely something that we need to look at as a whole. Part of the encouragement in the future, in the past, has been with the SEDS being adopted by all three of our bodies, because it gave us a single voice, a single action, and coming together, we could do, I believe, a great deal to promote and encourage economic development. Again, I hate to see us in this position that we're in currently, but it's one of our own making, and therefore, I hope that we can find a way to move economic development forward, whether it's with this vehicle or with some other vehicle. Thank you.
I'm just going to speak very briefly to the issue that the county diverged on, specific to the revised JPA that looked to remove wind power from the language that the authority could pursue. It was probably a mistake to do so, for me to offer up that motion, but it was a way to have potentially a unified approach by all three member agencies in the JPA that we hope can move things along. Since that time, I've realized that as a mistake, more specifically because the more we talk to our federal and state partners about the development of wind energy off our coast, the more that we learn that that development is going to be outside the control of not only the state of California, but also the county of Del Norte, the city of Crescent City, and the Harbor District. They're going to put those turbines out there whether we want them there or not. And we've been told that over and over again over the last year. So if it's going to happen, we need to, as a collective voice, find a way to approach this in a way that somehow, if it's going to be there, we gain benefit. And there's been various mechanisms outlined to us, Humboldt County taking the lead to figure out what that might look like. There's a lot we could learn. Whether we land that electrical power here or not and take advantage of it with our community to have a lower rate, or whether we look to seek to provide jobs that would maintain potentially that infrastructure that's going to go out there. But what we do know is that BOEM has announced that they'll make that release for those leases in 2026, or maybe even 2028, most recently off our coast. And it's most certain that those leases will be purchased. So looking ahead, if it's done through this body, as Chair Wilson stated, or another vehicle, is up in the air tonight. But what I would like to encourage is an approach, now that Tri-Agency's financial issue has been solved, to move forward as a unified group and speak with one voice on this type of economic development.
So my stance on this is, I know I've kind of been the one to make this about wind, and I'm not even going to go down that road at this time. More about economic development. You know, with the amount of money we're talking about, $110,000, with the county putting up, you know, over 70% of that, that's still not enough to do anything. I mean, you can't hire a full-time person with that amount of money to go out and pursue all these things that we want to accomplish. So I guess, you know, one option, which I'd possibly consider, would be if everybody was going to equally put up their fair share, you know, 70,000 apiece. You know, we throw out 210,000, we can probably come up with something good out of that. The way it stands, we're not going to do anything. We're going to spend half that money on legal fees, and, you know, you're not even going to offer any benefits to anyone. You're going to get a part-time person to do a halfway decent job. So my push, more than anything, would be, I would like to see the county keep its, you know, 70,000 and add to that, and bring our own internal economic development person and create our own economic development that can work on that SEDS document with the city and with the harbor, and have our voice partnered in with the city and harbor, and we can actually get something accomplished. I think we're throwing 70 grand at something that's going to be halfway done and nothing's going to come of it. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, as for me, the previous discussion we had about wind power and protection of our fisheries, I still feel pretty strongly about that. You know, there is a mechanism built into this proposal for the wind power if it does have a negative effect on our fisheries, and that is some sort of payment for mitigation. But that is one single one-time payment from the feds for any negative effects that our fisheries would suffer. It's not generational like we have in our fishing fleets. We've got families of fishermen out there that have fished for generations. It's not a viable solution in my mind. Also talking about our tribal partners, none of them are supporting wind energy. And, you know, talking to one of their board members, it's primarily because there's no science to back it up that says that it's going to be safe for our fisheries. That's really where my stance came from, to really not only not support this, but possibly come up against it. As for the creation of jobs, we all know what the projections are. You know, we're going to have a big push for jobs while they are manufacturing these wind turbines. But then very few jobs come in the form of maintenance workers after they're completed and in place. I don't see that as being a real viable economic driver for our community. So I guess I'll finish this up by just saying that as I've said before, I do have hopes for tri-agency. You can't look at the harbor and say that, you know, tri-agency doesn't serve a viable purpose in our community. Citizens Dock, you know, building of the harbor, our broadband that we have here now, we have not been suffering from terrible broadband over the last many years, is a result of the actions of tri-agency. So I do have hopes that tri-agency could do really good things for this community. There's plenty of opportunities to have economic development that I think tri-agency could take the lead on. I'm just not willing to sacrifice our fishing fleets for the idea that we're just going to have to give in to these wind turbines. I understand that this language that we adopted probably shouldn't be in a foundational document, shouldn't be that specific. I understand that. But I need to understand from this entity that we are going to protect our families and of our fishermen here by keeping this in place.
Thank you. Supervisor Starkey?
The only thing that I would add is that unless two agencies are willing to change the language to what the county, because I think you've heard from my colleagues that they are going to continue to insist that that language that we won't pursue wind power stays in there. And so I think we're at an impasse. So I don't know necessarily that we are able to move forward with anything other than dissolution if the county is not willing to modify the bylaws to be what you two other agencies have already agreed upon.
All right, about from the harbor, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, this is Rick Shepherd, and as a commercial fisherman, I feel that I have the most at stake when it comes to wind power, but we have the resilience fund that the fishermen have formed, and they're doing a wonderful job of attending all the meetings and making sure the fishermen are looked after in the future as the wind power develops. But I think what we've came to the to the resolution to is like you're speaking is that I don't think there's any stopping it. I think that it's built so much steam and there's such a tremendous amount of money that they put into it that it's going to happen. So I think it's really important as fishermen and as a county and a city to be part of it, because if you're not part of it, then you're not part of the whole process. And we found that in some of the the MPA process, that if we weren't part of it, we actually got a pretty good deal. We got it structured in a way that was good for our fishermen. And so I think that's a potential in the wind power. As a harbor, I think there's nothing that we could gain from it. There's money out there for us to rebuild our infrastructure. And so that's my comment on this, that it's necessary to be at the table when it is come about into this town.
Rick, could I ask Rick, what in those MBAs, what does it look like for the fishermen? What makes it look so good for our fishing families?
Well, I'm not saying it looks good. I think it's the worst thing that could ever happen. I mean, to put those structures in the ocean, it's the most pristine place we have. I've fished out there for 50 years, and It's going to kill me to see something like that happen. But what I'm saying is that no matter what we do, you're not going to stop it. You know, there's no stopping it. And I've come to that conclusion. Most of the fishermen have come to that conclusion. So you should be part of it so that you can maybe have the cable structured in an area that they don't affect the fishing as much. You know, and there's things that can be done as the process comes about that we can work around that won't benefit the fishing industry, but it won't hurt it as bad as if you're not at the table. You know, when we did the MPA project, they were going to put South Reef is they wanted it the worst place. That's where they wanted the most. And we actually saved that, or you wouldn't have any sport fishing. Our whole fleet wouldn't have been on South Reef. We got it moved way up in the Oregon border at Pelican, the Pelican Rock area. And our fishermen don't fish up there. It affected Brookings probably more than it did us, but we worked around the process, and it wasn't better for our fishermen, but we weren't affected as bad as if we weren't at the table discussing it. And that's what we're talking about wind power, is that if you're not there, they're going to throw those cables wherever they want to put them. They're going to put things in the ocean that are going to really affect our commercial fishing industry. And if we're not there to discuss it with them and devise their method of putting this wind power in that will hurt the fishing industry the least, I guess you could put it, that's where we're at. So.
My big debate on tri-agency is how can we move economic development forward in Del Norte County if we don't have a single voice? How well will the county, separately from the harbor, separately from the city, work together without some unified organization? Maybe it's not tri-agency, I don't know. With respect to wind power, it's an interesting subject. I know, and I agree with Rick wholeheartedly, if we're not at the table, we are making a huge mistake, be it for or against. We need to be at the table. And my concern is, who is the voice if we don't have tri-agency? I don't care if it's not tri-agency. I want to know who is the voice then for this community, whether for or against, who is the voice? With respect to economic development, I know this community needs economic development. I believe in economic development. Specific to the harbor, with respect to wind power, I've been working hard for trying to get harbor funds because the harbor needs infrastructure desperately. We've got a dock that's failed, if not failing already. We've got a seawall that's failed, and we're getting grants, but in the development of those infrastructures, especially the dock, we can bring some potential wind power vessels to tie up at the harbor and generate some revenues that we desperately need. Those developers at times will help pay for that. That's not to say that we need to have offshore wind power off Del Norte County. It's going in Brookings. There will be an auction this fall in Brookings, Oregon. Their harbor cannot manage, it's not suitable for wind power vessels. They need bigger vessels, and that harbor cannot do it. So we can, as a harbor, take advantage of the Brookings area and have vessels from wind power come down here. We can also potentially, because Humboldt's going to be so busy, I think we will gain some vessels from down there as well. So wind power will be, even without Del Norte offshore wind power, will be potentially a boon to our harbor. So back to tri-agency. I'm frankly frustrated because I've been working on it for 8 or 9 years. It's not that I want it, it's not that I don't want it. What I do want is economic development for Del Norte County, and how do we do it without tri-agency? Thank you. I guess, excuse me, I guess it's my turn. This is a very perplexing question for all of us. We really have to look at the larger picture to get an understanding of what's going on in our community. One, we're very stagnant. We're dependent right now upon tourism. The harbor is basically shut down on all of our fishing seasons right this minute. And then we don't know when they're coming back. With the Klamath River problem going on right now, where they've just started pulling the dams out, we're having problems with the kill-off. About a mile out from the mouth of the river and going and drifting up towards this area. We've got silt problems coming up towards us, which is another problem from the Klamath River. But the larger picture is, what do we want to do about development in this county? Do we need an agency or not? Do we want to have something that will obviously go forward and try and bring development into this community? That's a separate issue from wind power. To me, I think that as a community, we desperately need to find some way to have economic development in this community, rather than just depend upon tourism and lock it. Now let's talk about wind power for a second. Yes, it's going to happen. We can have a voice at the table if we want to. They're still trying to develop the corridors for how the power comes on shore, where it's going to come on shore. There's different political groups, all the way from people in Oregon to the people down in Humboldt and so on and so forth, where it should go. I mean, I've even talked to people who have asked me from the Klamath River, what's the name of the project up there? The Bonneville Authority. They've even asked about, since they have brought large towers down into Brookings, whether or not the power would be available to them because they're looking for it. These are issues that are really broad, not only just for our county, but it's for regional. Now let's bring it back down to the wind subject. It isn't just a matter of it's 26 or 28 when we're going to have this come available out in the ocean out here. Fact of the matter is that there's already 2 leases down in Humboldt. Humboldt Harbor is in a situation where they're going to be developing that whole area. A lot of congestion going on. RWE and their subsidiary company for the other lease have already contacted us and have already asked questions. The fact is that they're going to have to start right now doing bottom surveys of the ocean floor to understand what's out there, where the canyons are, where they're going to be able to jump the cables across if they're going to go that way. What are the drawbacks to anchoring these things out there? All of that studying has to be done by these companies, and they are out already looking for places to get involved. They've already talked to the harbor. Hello, we're out here, but we're looking at you. So it's a potential. Okay, so what do we do? Do we just sit here and go, no, not interested? Or do we say, all right, let's talk? And I think we have to sit there and talk to people. It isn't just the harbor on this thing. It involves all of us because it affects the entire community. We all need to be involved in it and to understand it. I mean, we could all pull back and say, yeah, we don't need this. And then when they come to us and ask us at the harbor, hey, you know, we need so much pier space, or we need another pier, or we'd like to dock so many tugs or larger ships out in your harbor. Sure, why not? We can do it. The question comes back to, what do we want to do? What's the best thing for the community? And that's my biggest concern, is how we as a group come together to look at what's best for the community. So far, we have done nothing but talk again, move money back to the agencies, move it over to the fund, move it back out. The problem is even larger than that. This agency was, and Linda was right, this agency was basically defunct. We owed 289,000 plus. I wrote the check to pay the thing off. I'm the treasurer. Okay? We were able to find that there was some money still out there, and we were able to capture that money, okay, on some of the deeds of trust. That paid for more than half of the money that Linda's yelling about, because that money was due the agency. We were able to find it, we got it, and we took care of it. And we all put up the remainder to bring it back out of the default. And the point is that the federal government could have very easily said through the Treasury Department, hi guys, we understand that you guys owe us money. Well, they could have reached into any one of our three treasuries and just taken it. Because their feeling was that all three of us are signing on the bottom line, even though our JPA in its language sits there and says, oh no, we're not going to be responsible. So what are we looking at? We had to pay the thing off one way or the other. It was something that had to be done, Linda. Okay, all right. Okay, but it was money that originally came from the federal government fund, loans that were made to individuals, and they were bad loans. We've learned our lesson. The language inside the JPA now that we're looking at has an absolute halt on doing anything when it comes to lending. Stop. No more questions on that issue. So again, it comes back to all of us. What do we want to do? We can either sit here tonight and discuss what we want to do and go forward, or we can just simply say, yeah, forget it. I'm tired of this, and walk away. So it's, you know, I'm just one vote here, but it's up to all of us to make up our minds what we want to do. And it's in the best interest of the public to have something and have a plan and how we want to develop. So I've talked myself to death here, and I'm sorry for rambling on, but there you go. That's my opinion. Here you go, Gerhard.
All right, I guess it's my turn. Well, what spoke the loudest to me so far was we got to be at the table. Doesn't mean, however, that a tri-agency needs to be at the table. What also spoke super loud to me was the comment made by Supervisor Borges. The money that we have so far invested and the usefulness that we can get out of this money that has been invested so far. And that in order to truly make an impact, we need to spend quite some more money. Let me tell you, the harbor doesn't have any money. So from my point of view, I'm saying, okay, is there another way that we can function? Is there a way that we can use, for example, the example of Humboldt as our guiding light? See what they're doing. Are they running into a wall with all of their different groups that are working against or with the wind power companies in doing good for their community? What are their experiences? Now, the critical point is not to miss the, harbor speak, the boat, so that we are at the right point jumping in and then come out with the united voice. Can it be Does it have to be achieved with the tri-agency? I don't know. Could there be 3 different ad hoc committees meeting that doesn't cost any extra monies? Why not? So I can see that in the future. So I think I would like to learn a lot more from all the other peoples. And one more thing that also spoke very loud to me. And Supervisor Short mentioned it. Our tribes are not at the table. That is an important component that cannot be left out. And I thought it was kind of funny that we create the agency first, make up all the rules, and then we tell the tribes, okay, we made the agency, we made up all the rules. You want to join? Yes, no? It's just doesn't pass the smell test for me. So, and anyway, I need more people involved. I need all community involved in that. And I don't think we have made the necessary effort to include the tribes. That's it for me.
All right, thank you. Bring it to the city council member Schlong.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with a lot of what has been said tonight. I sat on the tri-agency way back when we made some of those loans. And it was a loan program that was available to us to lend to local entrepreneurs, people that wanted to start a business. And unfortunately, some of those loans didn't come to fruition, and then some of you had to deal with it years later. And it's too bad. It was, the intentions were good when it happened. I've always felt like economic development is developing our economy. And if we're not going to develop our economy as local officials, then what are we going to do? And if we can have a voice with all 3 of our government entities working together and having one voice, it's much stronger. The tri-agency has a lot more power to accomplish things when it comes to infrastructure than ad hoc committees. Although ad hoc committees are great for getting together and having conversations, but they're meant to be short term. I've always been against wind energy in our ocean. I grew up in a fishing family, and it makes me sick to my stomach when I look at the size of the structures that would go into the ocean and how it would affect our ecosystems and our fishing, and those fishermen that, survive in that industry. However, as an elected official, just because I don't agree with something does not mean that I should not be learning and listening to see how it's going to impact my community, and to at least have a voice if it's going to be forced on us, to have so that we have as little impact to our community as we can, or to benefit our community if it's possible. The history of tri-agency prior to the lending program was very successful. I'd love to see, and tri-agency seems to be a bad word, but it's just the city, county, and harbor. I would love to see the 3 of us continue to work together to develop our economy. I am fine with removing the words wind energy from the tri-agency. I don't think the tri-agency bylaws were meant to say we are going to do this or not going to do this. The original intent of the tri-agency was to work together to create infrastructure for our community to move forward, so that we could increase our success for our local businesses and grow as much as we can, being in a county that's owned 80% by state and federal lands. So I'm 100% in support of the 3 agencies working together to develop our economy. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Greenup.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to take a moment and explain my vote for the Harbor's rendition of the tri-agency's bylaws, and then discuss where we could potentially go with this. I voted for the county's rendition because, or the Harbor's rendition, because I didn't feel that it was a good idea to hamstring the conversation for the tri-agency moving forward. I do believe that there's a place moving forward where we need to have these conversations, have these difficult conversations, whether we decide to support wind energy or not. Moving forward, I don't think that wind energy needs to be something that the tri-agency is the driver for. That can be done through ad hocs, as we've said before. It could be an ad hoc between these three member agencies. We could create that, and we could have just as powerful conversations as we are in a tri-agency meeting. Wind energy doesn't need to be there. So I'm prepared to vote for the county's rendition if, in fact, we can come to an agreement on this. If that takes, us saying that, hey, we're going to make a compromise here. We're going to agree that we're going to create an ad hoc between these three member agencies to discuss this and commit to that. And then we can go forward with economic development through the tri-agency. I'm good with that. I mean, there's not one way of doing this. So I'm just trying to find middle ground here. So I don't know. It's for me personally, wind energy, I'm not a big fan. I don't think it's efficient, but as a lot of the people here have said, it's coming down the pike, and we definitely need to at least be present and go through this with open eyes. It's our responsibility as public officials to at least be cognizant of what's coming down the pipe.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate everybody's input tonight. My personal conviction is that when we look at the JPA, the clause at 505E is inappropriate in a document such as this. I've said that all along. And I don't, because given the subject matter of wind energy, that clause has no ability to stop what the federal government does or doesn't do. And so to me, you don't write in a clause that has no effect. All it could do would be to keep the agency from talking about any of these things or going to any meetings or being engaged, which I'm not sure that that's really the intent. The intent, I would think, of putting a clause in there would be to try to keep it from happening. That's why I would put it in there. If I was going to put a clause in a foundational document, it would to make sure that's not going to happen. And in this case, given the fact of who has the ultimate authority, it's not tri-agency, it's not the county, it's not the city, it's not the harbor, it's the federal government. So I don't think it belongs. However, that said, I don't see our three member agencies agreeing on a JPA that doesn't have that clause in there. I haven't heard three supervisors saying, hey, let's just take it out and move forward. So if that's the case, then we really don't need to go round and round about this. I would agree with Supervisor Borges that $110,000 is probably not enough. It's not. My only caveat to that would be if we were going to start over, we have to start someplace, and at least that would get us to a place where with a consultant, we could come up with an evaluation of the existing SEDS and the city's EDSAP and the strategic plan at the harbor, and at least be able to craft a work plan with the understanding that we're going to have to come back have more money if we're actually gonna do any of these things. But I would agree with you. The $110,000 is not enough. Harbor's made it very clear they don't have any money. And I hear that. So, there's a couple things that I think that we have got to accept that are our responsibility. We have existing litigation that we all need to take responsibility. We can talk about that in the next item if there's no action on the first item. But I just want to make this statement about the future of economic development here, outside of tri-agency. Part of the reason that the tribes are not here yet is because until you can really get yourself organized in a way, you can't even make a good faith invitation for them to join as we are. I mean, why would you join this agency with as much uncertainty as we have? I wouldn't. If I was representing any one of our 4 federally recognized tribes, I wouldn't join this tri-agency agency as it currently is. Now, if it got itself together and was clear on its goals, its vision, and its staffing plan, then I think that you could make that. So that's part of the reason they're not at the table yet. With that said, my hope and dream for our community, for economic development in Delaware County, is that, and it will be somebody certainly besides me, that someplace down the road in the not so distant future, in the next 2 or 3 years, that the city, the county, the harbor, and our tribal partners will come together and say, we need to form an agency where we all share in the responsibility of building a better future for Delaware County. I'm not sure that it's possible, given all the history and everything that we've got going here, for us to do that. But if somebody doesn't do that, if elected officials in the future don't bring all these partners together, then we're in essence saying we don't really care about building a future. We need to work together. The city, the county, the harbor, and our tribal partners, along with our business community, need to find a vehicle in the future to come together to be able to look for out for the best interests of our community. But I firmly believe that responsibility is going to fall to future leaders. Maybe some who will still be in office when those opportunities come again. But this community deserves to have leaders who are willing to work together and build for a future. I just don't know what that looks like. It just doesn't look like tri-agency right now. And that's unfortunate. After 10 years of trying to get ourselves to a position where we possibly could do that. And we possibly could do that, but I don't think we're willing to, and that's okay too.
Why is it okay?
Why is it? Because I can't control. It's okay because you can't make somebody do something, right? I can't say to the harbor, you have to do this, or to the county, you have to do this, or to either one of you, you have to do this. We all have to go based on our convictions of what we believe we should do as leaders. And it has to be okay when people make choices that are not mine. I'm going to advocate for what I believe is best for this community. I've tried to do that for 14 years. And at the end of the day, that's all we can do as individuals. And one of the things that Commissioner Stone brought out is the fact is that the work the Tri-Agency did in recent years to capture some debts that were owed to the agency did help mitigate the cost of paying off our total debt. Those were debts that were owed to the Tri-Agency, which we were able to recoup as much as we possibly could to be able to try to offset this. So, but short of I hear the harbor saying, hey, we're willing to change our JPA and put the language in, or the city doing that, or the county saying we're willing to take it out, then I think we need to move to item B.
Just in response to that, during our conversation at the board meeting where we made the decision that we did. As Joey and I were voicing our concerns for the fishing fleet, I guess when we were talking, my sole intent was for us to not support the formation of these, this wind energy farm. I didn't understand, I didn't think I was doing it at the time, that I was taking away the ability for us to be at the table at all. And after that meeting and talking with folks, you know, people said, well, now they can't talk about it at all. And my thought was, that wasn't what was really discussed. We just didn't want to support it. But then looking back, that wasn't the words that came out of my mouth. Was when I was saying, I didn't want us to talk about wind energy. My head was saying that I didn't want to talk about wind energy like we were favorable toward that. I don't support wind energy. I don't want it because, as I said before, there's no science that says that we are not going to suffer from those being put in place. But I don't think that we shouldn't be at the table. I don't have that opinion. I agree with you fellas that it makes sense for us to stay informed. Thank you, Kelly, for that. So along that line of commenting, I am not against making a change to the JPA as long as it, again, we're talking about a foundational document. I'm just not willing to step away from the support of our fishing fleet. I do not want to support this this wind energy being placed off our shores, but at the same time, I don't want to take us away from the table. At the same time, if you guys want to discuss some change to our verbiage as far as that goes, I'm open to that, but again, I want to protect our fishermen, our fishing fleet. And Rick, I heard you, that's, you know, doing that, we got to be at the table to steer the ship if we can, but I don't want this agency to be viewed as in support of bringing these here.
I 100% agree with what you just said. And I do remember the MPA process and how if we hadn't been at the table, it would have been a lot worse. And I just fear that if the majority of us don't want wind energy, but we do want to be informed and try to benefit our community, then at least we have one voice to try to strategically keep it from impacting us as much as possible.
Yeah, my comment on it is, you know, I don't think anybody's for wind energy. I mean, the commercial fishermen certainly aren't. So I don't think that should disband the tri-agency. You can be against it and still be part of it, you know, just like you just mentioned the MPA project, or I did too. We weren't in favor of it, but we were at the table and got it structured in a way that was as good for the fishermen as it could be. So as far as wind energy goes, I haven't talked to anybody that's in favor of it. And so, but even if everybody's against it, we should still be at the table, is all I'm saying. And I think there's a lot of things that could come down the line that this wind energy is going to take a long time to produce, to even get going on. And some of the structures they're building are so massive that they're having a tremendous amount of problems. So I can't see disbanding tri-agency over wind power, but more to discuss what the tri-agency is beneficial to our community is probably the best subject that should be addressed, and get off the wind power a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd like to say something here. The wind power just seems to be this hangup, but, this whole thing comes back down to the better good of society. Okay? We're the little ant that's gonna get stepped on, and we need to stay out of the way and try not to get stepped on. That's part of the reason why we're saying you need to be at the table and talk. I mean, the state of California and the federal government have made up their mind that they want a certain set of goals and gigawatts by certain times, you know, and I've already explained this before. But the important point is the state is going to need another 45 gigawatts by 2050 just to provide the electricity for the running of this state. We can either import it from outside of the state or produce it here. That's what they're thinking. The best area for the wind just happens to be off of our coast. So the larger question is, does everybody's rates go up because we refuse to listen and talk, or do we bury our head in the sand, I guess is one of the questions. So, and I know I'm talking philosophically here, but the larger point is this. We have something to say. We need to say it. Myself personally, I just think that one section about the wind power, if you just simply remove it and just let it be, the voices inside the group can make up their mind whether or not they want to say something one way or the other, because what I'm hearing is a consensus of people saying, no, we don't want to be involved, and we don't want it here, but we should keep our mind and our ears open and listen to what's going on and try and understand it. So by simply removing that one clause, will that allow the JPA to go forward? That's the bigger question. And myself personally, we have to have economic development in this community. We need it. Okay? There's a lot of things that need to be done, and money that can come and flow in from whatever projects we develop, for whatever we decide to do to improve this community. That's what we should be looking for, and not fixating on wind power. We should be fixating on what is the better good for the group. In other words, for all of the people that live in Del Norte County. And so the question comes back down to, do we want a development agency? Do we even care about wind power as part of the development agency? The people that are on it, and the three agencies can make up their mind whether or not they want to do something about it. It's that simple. Do we really want to fixate on that problem? Or do we want to think about the larger community and think about the development of this county? Thank you.
So I started this out trying to make this not about wind power, but apparently that's all we're going to talk about. And so, I mean, we need to have a voice, whatever. Why is the harbor already not a voice? I mean, that should be your guys' main topic. The harbor can speak and yell and scream as loud as it wants, yay or nay. We can all have a voice. I mean, if we really love wind so much, we can develop a wind agency. We can all meet back here tomorrow. We can do this again. I mean, it's a great time. But the hopes for tonight, that's why I started that way, was somebody please come up with an economic development idea, process, strategy, some reason to keep this tri-agency around. Right now, all we're talking about is wind. I mean, I know I definitely started that train, but I tried to stop it and at least discuss literally anything else that the tri-agency can accomplish for the community. And I don't see it. And if it's going to be 99% geared towards wind, I mean, I guess then the funds should be 99% geared out of the harbor, because if that's all we're going to focus on, then this is a waste. I mean, we need to, if we're going to do development, let's do development. If not, we'll bring it in-house, we'll do ours, and we'll work with yours, and we'll work with yours, and we'll accomplish great things for this community. But just to be having tri-agency, and this is all we're going to talk about, and we're wasting time. We've discussed this 100 times, and I think it's time to move on. So I guess I move back towards the mayor over there. Let's move towards item B here.
Well, I'd like to address what you just said.
Absolutely.
my friend. Um, I think the reason people are talking about it is to find out who's going to be comfortable enough to either take yours out or put ours in.
Respectfully, we're not even there yet. We're just discussing, are we going to A or B? I mean, once we get to A.
Right,
if
but
we're
I'm just
deciding we're
saying,
gonna
I
be
think that's why
economic,
the conversations were being held. So,
Because someone's going to have to compromise.
yeah.
So is it going to be,
May I say something, please? I just want to ask my colleagues here, are we at all interested in eliminating section 505E from the bylaws? No. But I mean, if these colleagues, if you're not interested in eliminating it, we're at an impasse. We need to move on. So if my colleagues here are interested in eliminating it, then we should eliminate it and then agree with the other two agencies. Otherwise, like Supervisor Borges just said, we're spinning our wheels. The county is holding us up based on the vote that we have with that we want section, I think it's 505E in the bylaws. So are we interested in doing it? If not, then we just need to move on to B. There's nothing else to discuss.
You guys all right? Give a public comment? You guys all right with that? Okay, we're good. We'll give you guys, we've had a long discussion. We'll give you all one bite at the apple here, if you'd like to make public comment.
I have a suggestion for an amendment. I'm going to pass out a piece of paper. Don't start my clock yet, please.
Thirty seconds.
Blake?
Give you as much time as they do for Final Jeopardy. Sorry, sticking ball. That's okay. I wrote it down.
Later. Well, first of all, I've said this before, I think there is value to having an economic development agency, a regional agency. And I think still that tri-agency could have the potential to fill this role. But first, the member agencies have to decide whether they want to work this out. So what I just passed out, I'll read out loud, is the current section that is causing this impasse says the authority shall not support or pursue activities involving offshore generation of wind energy. My proposal would be replace that. Everybody has to compromise a little bit on this for this to happen, and it's a demonstration of your commitment to keep this going. That the authority shall not adopt a policy position either for or against offshore wind energy without a concurring vote and explicit agreement of each of the member agencies. That ensures everybody's rights, interests are protected, and nothing happens without your agreement. Of course, as you've discovered, all of you, each of you, would have to have a 4/5 vote to reconsider your prior vote, which is a pretty heavy lift. Adopting this amendment would place a major impediment in front of taking a position on offshore wind and would require that all the members are in agreement before any action is taken. There are reasons why tri-agency should have some latitude to engage in discussions on offshore wind. For example, if wind turbines are deployed offshore Humboldt, there will be a massive investment in grid infrastructure to wheel the power to the populated areas of California. While they're planning this, we should be advocating that these grid improvements should run a line north to connect Delaware County. This would give us the redundancy that we need. The Yurok tribe would be a natural partner in this pursuit. They have taken a position opposed to offshore wind, but they're still involved with fighting for the rights. I've learned a lot about offshore wind, and I still have many unanswered questions. If somebody tells you what impacts offshore wind will have or will not have, they're making it up. The truth is these floating platforms are new and they're not well studied. So what do? As Humboldt projects proceed, and as they prepare their environmental impact reports, this is the time that we should be asking these questions to be studied. Your indulgence, please. Exactly what effects will these projects have on marine life and the ocean environment? It makes sense to allow Tri-Agency and others to continue to monitor progress to protect our interests. As a result of a better informed elected boards and general public, better policy decisions may be made. The easiest thing to do today would be dismantle Tri-Agency. The greater challenge is to have a plan to move forward. Joey, there are many projects that Tri-Agency could be working on if we get past this impasse. They're in the SEDS. I've read the SEDS. It's chock full of goodies. Many things that could be worked on, but we have to get past this impact. We have to get past this impasse first. So this amendment ensures that no support for wind energy will happen, Darren. It ensures that conversations can still happen and that our interests can be represented. Thank you. Oh, I got 2 rings. Thank you.
My questions are, where's the rule that each entity has to have a JPA in order to sit at the table? In my purview, I don't understand that because you folks haven't made that persuasion or educated the public about why the JPA has to be there and not the city, the county, the harbor, and all the tribes. That, to me, sounds like that would be more powerful than a JPA. Secondly, in 2.5 years, this JPA wasted $35,000 just on attorney fees. So now you want to come to the public and you want to ask for money for your JPA, and you have no viable way to generate revenue. You just keep taking from the taxpayers. In the meantime, Pebble Beach needs to be fixed. The harbor's broke, and the county is, I don't know what the county is, but the whole damn thing's a mess. You keep saying that the Tri-Agency is beneficial for our community. However, in the last decade, I have not found any truth to that statement that you're saying, because the Tri-Agency's done nothing for this community except for drag it down to the pits of hell with debt. So think about that. The best thing to do, you don't uphold the laws. There's no transparency. There's not even a website. It's disgusting. And you all took an oath to uphold those laws. And every one of you are in violation because you condone that behavior. So this Tri-Agency, it needs to go away. The only thing it's benefiting is the attorneys who receive the fees for sitting at the meetings. Thank you.
Have any of you looked at what has happened in the Atlantic Ocean regarding wind machines? A total failure. I'm frustrated and disappointed by the continued disregard for the will of the people by the Tri-Agency board members. It seems that this meeting, like so many more before it, is nothing more than a charade and a waste of our time and taxpayer dollars. At the last joint public meeting, the voices of the constituents were loud and clear. We demanded the dissolution of the Tri-Agency, yet the board members chose to ignore our pleas, and on it goes. So let's not forget that these board members are elected officials chosen to serve the interests of the majority, not the minority. Yet time and time again, they forget this basic principle. We've spoken loud and clear regarding our demand for the dissolution. Seems to have fallen on some of your deaf ears. So what vested interests are at play here, driving the continued existence of this defunct agency? Do we need to vote out Measure R and S to get your attention? Is that how we send a clear message? I urge you to dissolve the tri-agency or suffer the consequences of losing measures R and S. And actually, I have petitions with me tonight to repeal measures R and S. And actually, with the city spending 1.72 million on the pool instead of the roads and the county not repairing the roads, I'd like to see Measure R and S repealed regardless. One last point. The school board approved a $59 million bond for the November ballot. Let me remind you that over 40 million is still owed on the last school bond. So property owners will be on the hook for umpteen years. And guess what? Those of us that have tenants will have to raise their rent. So to conclude, with sales tax, property tax, inflation, price increases on food and gas, how can folks prosper in this town without more and more going on government welfare programs?
I am Robert Black. I am the attorney for Tri-Agency, but I'm not speaking in that capacity. And I'm only the attorney in regard to the litigation that's ongoing. Excuse me. As a private citizen, I want to call your attention to something, and it doesn't go directly to the question before you, i.e. what to do about Tri-Agency tonight. But 22 years ago, the county and the city adopted a unique document, and I can't recall another one in existence. The county and the city adopted a joint resolution by unanimous votes of both the Board of Supervisors and the City Council to unify the city and county into a single governing entity, the city and county of Crescent del Norte. And that a bill supporting that and implementing that proceeded all the way through the legislature. And on the eve of the final floor vote in the state Senate, the city council withdrew its support and the bill collapsed. But that joint resolution has never been repealed. And I believe the concept should be revisited. And at that time, in $2004 or $2003, it was determined that the city and county would save $2.5 million in administration, fiscal management, planning, all kinds of other governmental functions that would have benefited from being unified into a single agency. And every agency, every governmental entity that we have in this county that has countywide jurisdiction, including the harbor, the health district, the airport, well, not the airport because it's a regional, but other entities could be collapsed into that single city and county. So it's an idea that should be revisited, is my belief. Thank you.
All right. Any other public comment before we bring it back to the member agencies? Okay. Any final words from anyone?
I would, first of all, Mayor, I appreciate you very much. And I feel bad that I'm learning that you are feeling pretty devastated that these three entities can't work together and move forward. I didn't know that you felt that way until I was sitting here with you tonight. So it's kind of a sad situation in my opinion. Less than 10 people being negative is not the will of the people. The majority of the will of the people want these three agencies to work together to improve our community. We're here to fight for our kids and their futures. And so I think we need to remember what our jobs are here.
Supervisor Howard.
I thought, Mr. Hendrick brought forward a potential solution, and since the county has been the holdout on this, I'm just curious if those that are at the table now have had a chance to read some of that language and opine on it with the rest of the board.
Yeah, thank you Supervisor Howard. Yeah, I do appreciate what Mr. Kendrick has brought. Just for those of you that are not able to see this, there's two different suggestions for verbiage of section 5.05E. The first being the authority shall not support or pursue activities involving offshore generation of, oh, that's what the current is. The proposed new amendment is, and I quote, the authority shall not adopt a policy position either for or against offshore generation of wind energy without a concurring vote and the explicit agreement of each of the member agencies. I think that's some pretty powerful way to put that. It does still give the power of the individual agencies to voice their opinion on specifically offshore generation of wind. And I think at least on the part of the board, we could definitely voice our position pretty strongly using that language, at least in my opinion.
Can I just ask a question, Supervisor Short? And since a lot of what we talk about when we talk about wind is hypothetical, just is, because there's not. So what if there's a major political shift again at the federal level, and the question is offshore drilling? Are we going to come back, if the agency exists, are we going to come back, and if you're against offshore drilling, we got to put a clause in to a foundational document over that? Or should this agency, if it persists, shouldn't the member representatives on tri-agency represent their respective boards? Shouldn't that be something that the individual boards control? So if the harbor is going to send two people to tri-agency, those two people shouldn't represent their own interests or what they like. They ought to represent the harbor. And if the harbor says we're in favor of economic development on this function, then they make their case. Same thing with the county, same thing for the city. That's why I don't believe any of this language belongs there, because it could be just as easily a question about offshore drilling. Matter of fact, we go back 5 or 6 years, we were asked to weigh in about that very issue here in Delaware County, because it was being questioned along California coast. That's why you take the responsibility at your individual member agency responsibility to say, you're representing us on the tri-agency. This is our stand. These are our convictions. These are our priorities. And then those two people from each agency come and they craft the work plan based around that. If the harbor says we're all about wind energy, and the county says we're all about not wind energy, guess what? It doesn't matter what the city says, because it's not going on the work plan. I mean, that's always been my problem with the language, is it's just, we're not taking the responsibility back to the member agencies of what we should do if we're going to have a JPA. And that is that we got to work together. We have to start with our own member agencies from the standpoint of what our priorities are, what we're willing to fund, and then ensure that whoever we task with representing ourselves on this JPA represent our agency, not our interests, but our agency. Anybody that sits on tri-agency, if I sit on the tri-agency board, I should be representing the interests of the city council based on the interest of the people of the city of Crescent City, not what Blake thinks about anything, but what the city council has said that these are our priorities, and we bring those to the table. Same for each member agency. And that's where we have, I think we have fallen short, is that we've lost sight of that. And that's why the document, I understand about changing about the lender of last resort, because that's what got us into lots of trouble. And it doesn't belong there. So putting an exclusionary thing that keeps us from getting into that kind of trouble is a completely different issue. But I guess that would just be my comment about the responsibility of being part of a JPA. It falls back to us to do that.
So I just want to point out that the reason this all even started and even got going was because the number 2 goal item on the tri-agency's work plan was to go after wind and support wind energy. That's what started this entire conversation, was the tri-agency's work plan. And their goal number 2 was to go after wind energy. And then it's blown up from there. So it wasn't necessarily even about needing to be in the bylaws. That's what started this whole conversation was. That was the best economic development that was developed. And I've asked again and again, what
Yeah,
other
and
ideas we have? And
it
that was the
never
number 2
belonged
goal.
there. You're absolutely right.
But
That's what started this.
to be fair, specific to economic development and work plan, we've got one. All our agencies approved it, and it's been on the table, and nobody's implementing.
Right, because
Nobody's implementing it because there's no capacity in any of these agencies unless we focus our limited resources together to move something forward.
which is where I put my
Which is
foot down.
why
because
we're
the
here
number 2
tonight.
item was the wind energy.
Okay, so we've got some potential language here that might solve one of your concerns. Backing up, we do have a work plan. It's the SEDS. The next question you asked tonight was contributions. We've got to find a way to pool our money. Harbor's broke. They've said that, right? Now it's up to the city and the county to figure out how to do it. You're right, 100% right. 110 grand ain't enough to do anything. But it's enough to get us started again, where we haven't been able to get started for 10 years because we've been too scared to put money into this thing for the treasury to come in and sweep us. That's why we all hesitated over a decade, is because we were afraid the treasury was going to come and sweep our accounts. So we held off until we had this debt paid. We've got it accomplished. We're ready to move forward. Let's get something started tonight. That's why we're here.
But speaking on the contributions, I mean, that's going to be another sticking point, at least for the supervisor, because I think it needs to be a little bit more equitable than the lion's share always going to the county. So, I mean, I'm just going to say that we're going to have one more issue coming up.
I don't know how to get by that piece, given the position of some of our member agencies, but we got to find a way to get there. I mean, for years, the burden of the trade agency was carried within the healthcare district by the state and allocated, thanks to Gary Blatt, had at least the foresight to fund this thing to go.
I think as long as I've been involved in city county politics, county has always had a higher burden in everything we've worked on together. And I think it's purely your budget versus our budget, the number of people you serve versus the number of people we serve. I think it's always been looked at that way. Doesn't mean it's right, but I think that's the history.
No, literally, and Kelly, you're right. The same argument was made when we walked down this path. Tri-agency is the one that led the platform on tourism. I'm not going to beat that dead horse, but the same argument was made at the time. Well, the city's going to benefit from this the most. Because why? Why? Because the city's got the most beds to put heads in, period. But what has that done since we've implemented an economic development plan here around tourism? It has caused a substantial growth in revenue for the county. Why? Because people started their own businesses around tourism. And now we have a robust really robust tourism here that we could grow on, but it's not the only thing that's gonna sustain this community. Because why? We got the rug pulled out from under this. We shouldn't have, our forefathers should have never gotten in bed with the EDC, but we're not arguing that today. We're arguing about getting back to bed with a minimal investment to get back off the ground. And so I don't know how to get past the language barrier, and I'm hoping Supervisor Borges could help me out there.
Mr. Chairman, might I ask a procedural question here?
Sure.
With respect to Section 505E, so how would we go about doing this? I mean, we seem to be standing here at an impasse. I think if you would ask for a show of hands, you might get to the point where everybody might say, yeah, we need to have an economic development agency. So then you guys ask yourself, okay, then do we remove 505E? Or how do we structurally do this so that we have an agency? And then we can talk about doing the other four things here, or three things. Do we need to eliminate 505E? Do we just go ahead? I think we're going to have a vote or two. So I am looking for some direction from the chair here.
Yeah, I think that Commissioner Stone, you're correct, that short of a specific action by the member agencies, there is no way to move forward with item number A. And so if there is a desire on the harbor part to either add in something that represents E, whether it is the item that the verbiage that is currently in the county plan, or what has been presented to us tonight as a suggestion from Mr. Henry, or something else. If the harbor wants to add in item E in any fashion, then you guys can do that. But that's, and the harbor, the county could be in the same situation. If you want to amend, I can't speak to your rules of order to amend the version that you currently have, or by either removing it or changing it, then you guys would have to figure out how procedurally to take action on that, if that's what you would want to do, and we would be in the same situation to do that tonight.
So-
I'm just, and I know that this probably not gonna sit well with everyone. I don't believe that E belongs. I just don't. If we're creating a JPA, we're being specific in a way that I don't think that's appropriate. Don't think it belongs there. I think that we have the protections necessary on our respective boards if we do our work to make sure that we, if this agency was to proceed to do the work that it needs to do. That's my conviction. I don't see anything that, or heard anything that's going to change that with respect to Mr. Hendricks, and I appreciate his input. That doesn't change my opinion about the JPA.
Okay, so let me understand something. I think the city and the harbor are in agreement currently, and the problem lies with the county as to whether or not to keep E in.
Or we could remove it
Or to remove it, yes,
or put in the amendment.
right. So procedurally, I think that it would be up to the county to do something before the two other agencies could do something, or we're stuck with the option B, which is to completely dissolve and walk away.
Yes.
Thank you.
So does the county need to start with a motion to do one or the other?
Again, I would make a motion to remove E in its entirety from the existing MOU and draft in compliance with that.
Second the motion.
You want to remove it from the MOU?
Can I ask our county council if we're able to do that? I'm just trying to listen to Jackie. Sorry, Supervisor. I just want to make sure that we're being legal is all I'm asking.
Ultimately, it's up to the chair to decide how he's gonna run the motion and run the meeting, whether or not he's gonna take it as a brand new item, or whether or not he's going to take it as an item that the board's already considered, that would have to go through the whole process of reconsideration and whatnot. Ultimately, though, he is the, person that makes that decision.
So just to be clear, and that motion is going to remove everything and also leave in the pursuing wind energy in the SIDS goals? Is that correct? That's where we're at? The goal, number 2 goal in that the tri-agency is after is the wind energy, pursuing it.
No,
And the number,
right.
no, it's still in the goals of the tri-agency, is that correct?
No,
When did that get removed?
that's what we're voting on.
No, you're removing from the JPA, pursuing it. It's still in the goals.
No, my motion is to remove it from the emotion. I don't think
These are, yes, so these are 2 separate documents. You're removing it from everything?
Chair, you guys need to talk in the mics more. It's really hard to hear.
Yeah, so this would remove the wind energy from the work plan as well as the MOU. If there is a indication of the MOU or just from the work plan. Is it just the work plan that it exists in?
So I guess I'm confused about this, the work plan.
Me too.
Goals. Joey, could you say that, is it in the SEDS document or is it what work plan are you referring to?
I don't know. I don't know what it, I think it was, I believe it was handed to us to review.
I don't think the tri-agency has adopted a work plan with wind energy as a number 2 goal. We've adopted the SEDS as our work plan where wind energy is mentioned. That's what I recall, but I don't.
I guess that's the one I'm referring to.
Okay, but
What do you call it, whatever.
that's just a.
But the SEDS is a county document.
No. The SEDS is a
Right.
city, county.
Oh, that.
All 3 of our member agencies adopted that document.
Motion is to remove the wind energy from our MOU as a goal.
From the joint powers agreement itself as currently drafted.
Can I just be more clear? The motion is actually to remove 505E from the bylaws. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I just need clarification because this, and this could be just me, but you guys are making a motion, but is this to keep item A is what we're going forward with, is what I'm thinking, the motion. We're gonna choose item A and then remove 505E from the MOU and the work plan. Is this the motion? I just need clarity on this. Because
That is my understanding of the motion that I seconded, is that 505E would be removed from the bylaws that are.
and I understand that portion, Supervisor Howard, but I'm wondering, are you guys picking option A then is what we're going with? Because
We're
going
making
with
this.
what's on the agenda
yeah,
here.
We're making this motion and then that will allow both the harbor and the city to then make a determination if they wish to move forward with that caveat being changed.
Council, can you clarify? Can we make a motion on something that's not on the agenda?
I believe what she needs clarification on is there's one agendized item. There's 2 sections under that agendized item. So your motion in regards to changing what the county adopted as far as the JPA language goes would have to fit under one of those 2 agendized items.
Correct, Council, thank you.
If I could speak in, if we do have an item, under A, which is I, joint powers agreement and possible revisions.
Yeah, that's what I'm
I
reading.
think that's where we're at right now. Because we haven't really
Staff.
decided on A yet and can't until we get through this.
No, I understand that, but I just wanted clarification that this is falling under option A because nobody mentioned option A. They just said we're adding something to the JPA or removing something. So I just wanted clarity for the minutes that we're following in line correct is all. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
not to interject, but I understand where you're coming from, but that, my understanding is that this discussion, it's an A and B issue, but we're discussing the possibility of an action right this minute under item A, number 1. And that's where
Right.
we're at right this
Right.
minute. So just for clarification, so then they are acting under A1 to make a decision. And so when A1 is made, then the rest of us can make a decision.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure we're cruising under option A. That's, you guys have answered that and we're good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, you made the cumbersome problem even more cumbersome in trying to figure out what you're doing. It was my understanding the Board of Supervisors needs a 4/5 vote to consider talking about wind energy. Do you have that 4/5 vote, or are you busy talking about wind energy right now? I want to get this right, is what you're doing.
That's not a factual statement. We could bring county council back up to address it if necessary, but as she mentioned, the chair has the authority, which is what allows us to not have a 4/5 vote.
Ultimately, it's up to the chair to decide whether or not the motion that's being made is a brand new motion where it doesn't require the rules to be suspended and all of that, or whether or not the board is then reconsidering something that they've already considered.
Thank you.
So if we have already considered this item at a previous meeting, and that is 505E as it stands right now, even though the chair made the motion, it seems like to me we're considering the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at it as a similar thing that you've already considered, perhaps the exact same thing, but ultimately, according to the Rosenberg rules, the chair decides how to run the meeting and how the motions are considered and all of that.
It seems to me that if we were considering a new amendment, that would be new business. But if we're talking about removing that language, that would put us back to where we started at the beginning of this.
November of 2023.
So it seems like if we're going to consider removing E as stated, then we would need to suspend the rules. And I believe we've already talked about that at our previous meeting.
Yes.
That's just my opinion.
Is he right? Or
Yes, I mean, ultimately, it's up to the chair. If Mr. Wilson, if Chair Wilson is seeing this as a different motion, but I mean,
he
I,
made the motion, so
Yeah.
he's seeing it as a different motion, clearly by making the motion and me seconding it. Now we're having some discussion to make sure the motion is, as Supervisor Starkey mentioned, is legitimate. Or
yeah, I mean, I would have concerns with it because in November of 2023, the board considered the exact JPA without the 505E. But at the end of the day, the chair is the leader of the group and makes the decisions.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess I gotta go back because I could see where this question's leaning on Supervisor Short right now, potentially as a swing vote in this decision, but reflecting on Mayor Enscore's conversation here a minute ago, we're in a situation where we, as an individual agency, need to bring those thoughts to the table if we're so much against one potential issue, whether it's oil drilling or wind power. And so whatever the board collectively comes up with and sends us to the JPA with, in this case, tri-agency, that would be the standard that we would uphold. And so
I'm
No,
not sure if that was a question or.
Not
Yeah,
to,
I'm
not to
sorry.
necessarily interrupt you guys' discussion, but just so that I'm clear and you guys are clear, the motion that was made, because there was some talk about the work plan and this and that. But as I understood, the motion initially was to remove section 505E, which would mean that the new JPA would have no language at all that prohibited discussion or anything regarding wind energy. It would be the version that the city and the harbor have approved. It would be as if 5.05E didn't exist. That's what I heard as the motion. If that was not what Chair Wilson meant, then probably better make sure that we're clear on that, because that's what I heard.
that's what I seconded.
Okay, so want to make sure that we know
That's
what
why-
we're,
That's what I seconded, and that's why I referenced just now the comments that you made. Because that language does not need to be in our foundational documents. We need to, at least as a board of supervisors, rely on our ability and trust of our supervisors to bring that same message to the JPA. So you sold me, Blake.
Having that, council, we will consider this a 4/5 vote for the purpose of
So you're then changing your
motion.
motion to a motion to reconsider?
Yes.
Okay.
So it'll be a motion to reconsider
It would be a
whether
motion
we
to
wish
suspend the rules first.
to bring this forward as a vote.
It's a
Sorry for that, Kylie.
It's a motion to suspend the rules.
Okay,
first.
so now we're taking the motion off the table that Chair Wilson originally
Yes.
stated, and now we're just making a motion to suspend the rules.
Yes.
Yes.
And we can do that even though it's not agendized, Jackie.
Yeah, it's under the first part of the
Okay.
number 1A.
All
or
right.
whatever.
Thank you.
For the sake of discussion, I'm going to go ahead and second that.
Please pull the vote.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Starkey,
No.
Supervisor Short,
No.
Supervisor Borges.
No.
Chair Wilson.
Yes.
with,
So with all that work we've done for 2 hours now, you guys can't come to an agreement to move forward.
Well, no, but we can do something else, and that is, make a motion that, I will make a motion that we, adopt the proposed language that has been given to us by Mr. Kendrick, saying the authority shall not adopt a policy position either for or against offshore generation of wind energy without a concurring vote and the explicit agreement of each of the member agencies. And I will make that motion contingent on us discussing this at our next board meeting to create that explicit, to create that, policy from our agency.
I'm asking, excuse me, do you have to suspend the rules again in order to make this motion, or
No.
since it's a
No,
separate motion?
this is new proposed language.
The board has not considered that language before, so I would not say that you have to suspend the rules and go through that whole process. It is something new. Though the board has considered this JPA on multiple occasions.
And counsel, sorry, have you read the language and if you could provide your legal belief on that? I mean, that's where I'd like to know, just legality wise, is this something that you would suggest for the Board of Supervisors, since you're our legal counsel?
I don't know exactly what you, I mean, it would accomplish, I believe, what a couple of you up there are concerned about.
Well, it seems like to me the language says that we could discuss it at the Board of Supervisors, and if we vote to have an official position of not supporting wind energy or oil drilling or whatever, then we could come together and make that decision as a group, so the representatives on tri-agency could stay in unity with our decision.
Yes, I mean, it accomplishes, I believe, what at least two of you are concerned with. You know, I haven't had a long time to digest it, whether or not it's in the best, the best for the county to want this type of language in the JPA, but I mean, it does seem to accomplish what you want without giving an opportunity to accomplish what you want without maybe isolating the other two agencies and what they want.
And then my final question is, if our board makes this motion and we adopt this, does it now need to go to each individual board? And if they adopt it, then we're back in business?
Yes. Yes. Because this is a meeting of three agencies as opposed to the tri-agency itself.
I'm a little unsure what, do we ask a show of hands if anybody be in support of that motion from the other agencies, or just go ahead with the vote? I'm not sure how to move forward from here. There is no second.
There can be, yes. Now there's a second, and now we could have discussion amongst the board to see if that can move forward.
We have a motion and a second and a question amongst the other boards, whether that is something that would be considered by your individual boards or not.
Does our council want to weigh in at all?
I would say, I mean, I don't have any legal or procedural concerns with the city council considering like motion this evening.
Thank you.
Or the inclusion of that language in the agreement.
Thank you.
made a motion to adopt the language, the authority shall not adopt a policy position either for or against offshore generation of wind energy without a concurring vote and the explicit agreement of each of the member agencies. And I made that contingent on us discussing the adoption of that policy at our next board meeting.
What, I don't know, maybe you can help me, Supervisor Short, because I don't know what that, what do you mean by adopting that policy? I mean, we're talking about an amendment to the JPA here. So we're either going to propose an amendment, but if you're proposing an amendment that then you're going to go talk about, and there's going to be something else, then I don't know how we could possibly take any action on what you may talk about someplace later.
You are correct. I did use language that wasn't correct. I said contingent, and it can't be contingent. I just would ask that the chair put that on for our next board meeting, and we will discuss that policy at a later time. So yes, I will remove that language saying contingent on that discussion at our next board meeting. So
Our legal counsel said the 4/5 vote is not required.
that's correct. Yes.
Thank
So-
you.
This is considering new language. This is not suspending the rules. So that's the 4/5 vote part. And we don't need to suspend the rules for consideration of new language.
So to consider, your motion now is for the proposed new amendment to section 5.05E only to be
Correct.
added to, okay, and I still seconding that motion.
May I ask a question? I know I'm out of order. Would your intention be to adopt the JPA with that amendment included? Because then you would be done.
I guess I'm not
Because
understanding.
just adopting the amendment is, you have not approved the JPA. Adopting the amendment and the JPA would be the final action they have.
I could change the wording of that to adopt JPA with the amended language.
Second, go ahead.
Just since we're clarifying everything, if we move forward and start going down this list, does that eliminate the opportunity to make the motion to go to item B and just terminate this and be done? So at any point, we could still make that motion, and if we can't come to any agreement, and terminate. That's
You can
correct.
always have a second motion on the table or a third motion.
But I mean, once we start down this path, is it going to be too late?
Oh, that I don't know.
Okay. So we're just discussing the items
This-
below it.
This is what's kind of been the issue, and that's why I
Right.
brought it up earlier, because nobody's saying with their motion, we're gonna go with option A and then add this. They're just kind of throwing stuff out. So we just need clarification. I make a motion to go with option A and to add this, blah, blah, blah. So we have more clarity instead of kind of everything being spotty and all over the place.
I think that's what Darren's revision was, correct?
Supervisor Short, may I help staff in this clarity? This motion then would be to continue the Tri-Agency Economic Development Authority under the amendment to the Joint Powers Agreement to include the proposed new amendment to section 5.05E as you previously read into the record. Would that provide enough clarity to staff? And I believe
That would be fine. And I still, in answer to Supervisor Borges' question, I still think that would not take that off the table. I don't know, though. It depends on the other boards and the other discussion items.
So that doesn't, by adopting item A, does not eliminate us from still making a motion for B.
Unless we all agree to move forward with A. Well, I don't know why those are on the agenda because contributions are gonna have to go back to the individual agencies. It's budget time. Work plan is gonna have to be decided upon by the tri-agency. Right? And that's only if we move forward with tri-agency. So,
So we could potentially choose to table under A 2, 3, and 4 at this point in time, or even have the discussion tonight on at least a contribution piece. It's up to the rest of this group.
mhm.
I'd seek the chair's leadership there.
Guess I'm not sure why. Here, why would we need to wait? Kelly, I don't understand.
So for example, right now, we're talking about the city contributing 30 or 35 grand, the county 70, the harbor 5 or 0. If we were going to discuss the city contributing 50,000, we could not make that decision tonight. We would have to take it back to the city council, put it into our budget, and then make that agreement. I mean, we could clearly give direction, but not.
We could. I think the point is there's a question on
Okay.
the table and the county needs to decide what they're going to do.
We have a motion and a second. Pull the vote, please.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Starkey,
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Borges,
No.
Chair Wilson.
Yes.
With that action, I would ask the Harbor Commission if there is any interest in adopting the Joint Powers Agreement with the proposed language of adding, or from what you had already previously approved, section 5.05E with the verbiage that states the authority shall not adopt a policy position either for or against offshore generation of wind energy without a concurring vote and explicit agreement of each of the member agencies. Is that something that the harbor is willing to make as a motion and vote on?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that we do exactly that.
I'll second it.
Any discussion amongst yourselves?
I just don't believe that language fits in the founding documents, so I'm going to vote no.
Commissioner Stone. Commissioner White,
No.
Commissioner Weber,
No.
and Secretary Shepherd. Yes.
With an inability to agree upon a JPA, then I'm going to, on behalf of the city council only, make a motion to approve section B, to terminate the Tri-Agency Economic Development Authority pursuant to section 8.03 of the Joint Powers Agreement, with the understanding that if we approve this, we need to have a discussion regarding the costs of existing litigation. That's my motion.
And is the only person that could second is somebody on the city council? This is crazy. On behalf of the county, I'd like to make the motion that we terminate the Tri-Agency Economic Development Authority pursuant to section 8.03 of the Joint Powers Agreement.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, just a question. Not ignoring some cost of litigation that's out there. We've come to an impasse. say, just for the sake of argument, that this body, votes no on this motion. Where do we go from there? It seems like to me that, we can't come to an agreement to remain a unified agency, so, I don't understand what the motions are here to terminate. Do all three of us have to agree to terminate?
I believe the bylaws, actually, as they exist from 1997, indicate that one agency can pull out and then the other two would be remaining.
That's right. It's true.
Chair, are you ready for me to hold the vote?
Yes, please.
Supervisor Short,
Didn't want to see tri-agency go away, but I don't see another avenue. I'd like to keep tri-agency. I'm gonna say no.
Supervisor Howard. Supervisor Starkey,
Yes.
Supervisor Borges,
Yes.
Chair Wilson.
Yes.
Go ahead, Wes. The Harbor want to take official action on item B?
I would move to terminate tri-agency.
I'll second the motion. To terminate.
Terminate.
Okay.
Yep. You want to poll a vote, Mike?
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Stone,
Yes?
Commissioner White,
Yep.
and Secretary Shepherd. No.
Carries.
Okay, regardless of whether the city council took action, we will follow up and we will agendize this for a city council item to take our part. We do still need to come to an agreement on all three member agencies to share whatever costs are associated with existing litigation and the dissolution process of this agency. There will be some costs associated with it, and I would like that there to be at least an agreement officially on each agency's part to acknowledge that they will share equally in the cost associated with litigation and dissolution.
If I don't agree to dissolution, I don't agree to paying for your dissolution.
I find it difficult to believe that we couldn't come to a compromise on this issue and find a way to work together as three agencies for the good of this community. I find it very difficult to believe that we couldn't over some wording in our bylaws. I just, this is not acceptable to me personally. So I understand that you guys made the decision, but this just doesn't sit well with me, and I don't think it's going to sit well with the community that we, as the three major governing boards in our community, can't come together on a simple, something as simple as the MOU for an organization that's supposed to encourage growth in our community. I don't understand.
Okay. Okay, then I'll take it a shot with the other two member agencies. And then all I can do is commit to the other two agencies as mayor that I will put this on a future agenda to address it with all of the city council. But I do think that for your own sake, it would be good to acknowledge that there's a responsibility as we're, it hasn't dissolved yet. So we're all still part of the tri-agency. And so we do have a responsibility to cover the costs associated with that.
There are existing costs already bore that need to be paid, and those, I make a motion that the city, that we agree to the third of the share of the closing costs to the tri-agency.
Second.
Please pull the vote.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Starkey.
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Borges,
Yes.
Chair Wilson.
Reluctantly, yes.
I would move that the harbor share a third of the cost of dissolving the tri-agency. I have a couple of questions before we do that. Does anybody have a clue as to how much this is gonna cost? And what would that be for? I was gonna ask for council's discussion.
Well, I heard 11,650. I can tell you that's actually somewhere in the range. It's hard for me to say exactly because the litigation is ongoing. We have another court hearing on the 20th. But if dissolution is the determination of your governing bodies, that is going to simplify the litigation. There will be some costs involved in the paperwork to wrap things up and to assure that all bills that are outstanding have been received and can be paid. Unless there's something, however, that I'm not aware of, I would say that the total cost of finalizing the litigation and wrapping up the entity is maybe somewhere in the range of $15,000 and could be, if I had to say one way or the other, could be even less than that. So. No, that would be the total tri-agency bill. Yeah, split three ways, or split however you guys decide to split it. I don't know that that's, it sounds like three ways is where the direction it's going.
There's a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? I'll second the motion. I'm gonna pull it up.
Commissioner Stone,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
and Secretary Shepherd. Yes.
Okay. I don't see that the
Mr. Mayor, if I could,
Yeah,
just,
go
I
ahead.
just wanted to throw it out there that when you adjourn this meeting, we would have to reconvene, all three of us together, vote to suspend the rules to reconsider this.
That's correct.
So before you adjourn this meeting, we still have one chance, and that is the motion, there is a motion to reconsider. Just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that that was a possibility.
That is correct. This board,
We
But I know-
we didn't take any action.
I know you were about to.
this board would have to make a motion to reconsider.
No, this board or the harbor, either one. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of the procedures. So.
All right. As I said, on behalf of the city, I will ensure that the city takes up these two topics that you all acted on tonight regarding dissolution and the shared of costs with our full council at our next meeting. But with no other actions to take tonight, then we will stand adjourned.